tell you more about what he does and introduce himself, which is delighted he's here. And over to Simon on a national perspective.
Hello everybody, thanks to Richard and Co for inviting me to speak here today. I've got a fairly dense presentation visually to show you, but you'll be able to look at it afterwards. It'll be circulated, so don't feel the need to take everything down. It's better to perhaps just engage in it. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Yes, good. Okay, firstly, also in English, I'm afraid, but there wouldn't be any other language, I don't suppose, to cover the range of nationalities here, so apologies for that. I hope you can understand most of what I'm going to say. Okay, so I'm Simon Whittemore, and I'm from an organisation called JISC, which doesn't stand for anything anymore, just JISC, and I'll explain who we are and what we do in a minute. My background is, apart from JISC, is in Higher Education Funding Council before that, which funds, research, teaching, HE for England, and also got a background in teaching and in business management consultancy. So a fairly wide range of perspectives to bring to the table. So today, basically, I'm going to cover these areas in my talk. If you have any burning questions, please do speak up and don't hesitate to interrupt. I'm going to cover JISC itself, what we do, what our purpose is. Going to cover some of the stuff you've heard already, really, which is the pressures on institutions at the moment in the UK, how they're responding to them, challenges and opportunities. I'm going to focus on a particular area, which we call business and community engagement, which is effectively also known as the third mission after research, teaching, or teaching research in some cases, and then the third mission, which is how you engage with external parties and deliver some of those services that John was talking about earlier and Gary was talking about earlier to externals, whether that's CPD or consultancy or whatever. So it's about working with externals. That's the area I'm going to focus on. I'm going to look particularly at challenges and opportunities around infrastructure and skills in that area, and how we in JISC, and not just us obviously, but I'll focus on what we've done, otherwise I'd keep you much longer, how we have supported and enabled change and led strategic change across the sector in this area. Now our particular focus is on technology, really, is on digital the digital world, really. JISC is the leader in the UK for supporting education and research in digital technologies. So that's really our focus. However, obviously we do that in a way to support all other initiatives, not just in order to put the technologies out there, but it's about supporting institutions across the whole of the UK, FE as well as HE, further education as well as higher education, by the way, but today I'll focus just on the higher education part. Okay. In terms of change, I suppose leadership and management, the program I'm going to talk to you about is really about facilitating and enabling change. So not so much leading change from a traditional hierarchical management perspective, but facilitating and enabling change across a whole sector, across a variety of institutions, all of which have different, something's interfering, all of which have different missions and combinations of capabilities. Okay, so who is JISC then? JISC has been driving education and research in the UK and innovation in particular in that area for the last 15 years. We're now a charity. We didn't actually exist until very recently. Legally speaking, that is. We were one of those dreadful things, a committee. But we are no longer. We're now a charity. It wasn't so dreadful in many ways because we actually cohered a wide range of capabilities and expertise across the sector to be able to deliver all sorts of resources, as I'll show you some examples in a number of different areas. But in any case, we're called JISC now. At the moment, our governance, we're owned, if you like, by these organisations here. Universities UK, representing universities, along with Guild HE in the UK, and also the Association of Colleges for the FE side. So that's our governance, if you like. There are four sort of pillars, if you like, to JISC, and the components. We're undergoing ourselves, I should say, a lot of change at the moment. So I speak as somebody going through a change process, which a lot of uncertainties for a lot of people, but of course business continues as usual. We continue to be very busy delivering what we have. But right now we're going through that very change process. So interesting reflections on today and on some of the previous presentations as well. Four pillars to JISC. The first one is, I guess you could call it the backbone of what we do. And incidentally, this is all publicly funded at the moment. I mean, we do enter into partnerships with other organisations, but this is all public funding, so just to make that clear. Janet is the network, the backbone to JISC, and it's basically provides the infrastructure, high-speed network, supporting the whole of education and research UK. I work for a part called JISC Innovations, which is also called Digital Futures, which is about really, I mean, that probably doesn't mean anything to you. Open access does, hopefully, but there are some examples of the areas we work in. Open educational resources, helping institutions to make their educational resources more open online, lots of opportunities there. Business and community engagement, which is what I'll talk about. They're just one or two examples, but basically we support learning, we support research, we support the third mission. But we work with institutions to help them innovate in these areas. The third area is called JISC Advanced, which is about some specialised services we have, and this is again UK-wide. That involves services such as assistive technologies, good practice at Infonet, Net Skills, which is about training for working online, JISC Legal, which is a wide range of resources to support institutions in legalities, very relevant to the area I'm going to talk about, etc. Quite a wide range of services there. And finally, the fourth piece is a sort of content piece, is JISC Collections, which is about digital content, negotiating on behalf of the sector as a shared service, which is very much aligns with current government policy to provide digital content. What do? We create efficiencies, that word again. I'm afraid in the public sector and in higher education at the moment, the word efficiency remains very important, but also opportunities. We do save institutions millions of pounds. JISC Advanced, for example, for every £12, every pound invested saves £12. So there's other figures for the other areas as well. So it's really about supporting change and innovation and helping institutions to take some risks maybe that they wouldn't otherwise take if we didn't support them in that sort of initial process to help them work with others. So that's what we do. Okay, what are the current pressures in the sector at the moment? You've heard a lot of this already from Gary and from Richard, and so this isn't new, but it's just my view on it from a cross-sector perspective. Not particularly any institution, all types of institutions. Basically, we're looking, I think, about two things. One is accountability, much stronger accountability on institutions across the sector. This is public funding, obviously, so taxpayers' money. And also demonstrating value. So, you know, within that, demonstrating the value of the research, of the teaching. Basically, those three areas there at the top correspond to the three missions I just mentioned. And the student one remains the most important at the moment, and that really is the driver for most institutions at the moment, is student experience, improving the student experience, because obviously the cap has been lifted on the fees and they are paying, so that's a key driver. Another very key driver in research is impact, the impact of research. The government's started to measure this year in the Research Excellence Framework, and the impact of all that publicly funded research in what is called a dual support system that we have here in the UK, which is basically where we fund research infrastructure and we fund research projects, and together that's the dual support system, now has to demonstrate this impact much more evidently to society and to funders and to everyone, to the economy and society. And the third one is really the area I focus on, which is around engagement. And it's that word collaboration again, which is probably going to be the buzzword for the whole event. It's cropped up many times already. So that's the value to the public, the value to business, the value to communities. Increased competition results from this situation because there's financial austerity, because there are fewer resources, because even in HE we'll probably see some mergers and acquisitions as well. And I think in those particular areas, the competition for top researchers, again I mentioned the Research Excellence Framework, there is competition for people to help institutions with that particular exercise. The international marketplace, we're no longer, obviously there's the US and the other Anglophone countries, but even the Anglophone countries are no longer the only ones to deliver good quality education in English. So that's a big change as well. There's competition there financially. Funding of higher education versus health, pensions, all those other areas which are desperately in need. So, and then finally the distinctiveness of different types of institutions. A lot of institutions are differentiating themselves at the moment. Might be the social enterprise university, they might be the business university. They're trying to find ways to have a distinctive offer based on their unique combination of skills. And internationalization, of course, need I mention, is another big driver across the sector. So those are some of the pressures. Business sustainability is really the last point, that distinctiveness. What is it that is the USP, the unique selling proposition of those institutions? Okay, that's what's happening to the sector. What's driving all that? These are some of the policy drivers. These are some of just a selection really of some key policy drivers over the past few years. You know about the student fees cap removed and the Brown Review around that. We had the Diamond Review, which is all about that word efficiency again. So again, that's the student as the customer. There's also the widening participation agenda, which is about ensuring that higher education reflects and is open to people of all different demographics in UK society. In research and innovation, we've had a number of white papers, the one on intellectual property as well, and that's all really about the government trying to improve access to knowledge, access to that research. And I'll come on to that in a bit more detail, but historically that system has been a little bit internalized. It's been about publications and citations in high-value journals, that sort of thing. There's a real drive now, and there has been for some years, but I think it's really coming to a point now where wider public access to that knowledge in a form which is digestible and makes sense to people, not necessarily long academic papers, has become a real important driver. University business collaboration, again, we've heard quite a bit about that. We've heard a really valuable perspective from John from the business side. This is the area that I support across the sector from the university side. And again, we had an important review by Sir Tim Wilson making some strong recommendations there, a lot of which were about employability, actually, to pick up on an earlier point. Recently, a new centre for university business collaboration has been set up in the UK, so you'll hear a lot more about that. That's a good practice centre for how to do this effectively. And we've got the whole digital nation movement, Digital Britain. By the way, on the university business collaboration, that's the government's intention that we should become the best in the world for university business collaboration. Apparently we're not doing too badly at the moment, but there's certainly no room for complacency. And on the digital side, access to digital information, Digital Britain remains a very strong driver nationally. So those are some of the policy drivers shaping those pressures and opportunities. Okay, so how does JISC innovation, how do we do change? How do we lead strategic change across the sector? As I say, this is a model which is about funding and supporting institutions, funding and supporting collaborations and partnerships in particular, to help institutions and groups of institutions maybe take risks, try things that they wouldn't otherwise do. So we're supporting positive change across the sector. And when they try those things get transferred to other contexts and hopefully used, and it becomes good practice. That's the theory anyway. So these are the sorts of things we do. We enable, facilitate, catalyze. That's the sort of change we're talking about. We're talking about innovation projects here, not research projects. That's a big adjustment for a lot of institutions, a lot of individuals who receive our funding, who get involved in this work. It's about innovation, which means you don't have very long to actually put some results together. It means you have to create a consensus rather rapidly between the people you're working with. It's not the old research model of the principal investigator and, delivering a nice report at the end. So we're doing something different. It's about innovative use of technologies, especially web technologies, inevitably. I've already said that, and some other principles there around transferability, and assessing impact is a particularly key aspect of what we're doing at the moment. Working with partners increasingly, I've mentioned just 3, there are absolutely large numbers of partners we work with, including the Leadership Foundation, and you'll hear from Leslie here later on today, well, after me today. But working with those partners is crucial to be able to deliver something cohesive across the UK where we're not just replicating things already there. Okay, something else that's changing in HE at the moment is the roles, professional profiles of individuals across HE. There was a report, and this isn't that recent, again this is a Leadership Foundation published report. This is about 2008, but it remains very relevant, and the report found that there is traditionally 2 areas in certainly research-intensive institutions of administration and academia, broadly speaking. And this report basically found that a third space is emerging and has emerged between those areas. That is a little bit, that dichotomy is a bit obsolete now. So we have a third space. We have individuals who are working across different areas, blended individuals, cross-boundary. So boundary spanning and the skill and capability of working across boundaries, whether it's research, teaching, working with externals, working with internals, delivering to externals on their terms and not just on the institution's terms, these things are becoming more important. And what's emerging are different roles within institutions, pracademics, people who both academics but also practice, particularly in areas like the creative industries, where they have perhaps their own businesses, but they also lecture and do research in the institution. Data scientists, increasingly important in research. So enterprise and collaboration are becoming more and more key and more widespread. So the profile of people across institutions is changing. The profile of staff and managers, the number of managers are increasing. So that is a response to all these drivers and all these pressures, but also an opportunity and shows adjustment. Okay, moving on to the particular area I focus on, which is business and community engagement. Again, this is about working with external parties outside the institution. And those parties could be businesses. And when I say businesses, I don't just mean private sector, public sector, private sector, local authorities. They could also be communities, community groups, social enterprises, whatever, any external body. Basically, we've got a sort of concept under which there are 4 different types broadly of engagement in that area. Public engagement, which is a sort of extension of research, if you like, and there's some examples here of each type. This is a typology that we use in JISC. It's not the only way to do this, but it's a broad and inclusive way to do it for a whole sector with lots of different types of institutions. Employer engagement, which we've heard mentioned today, give us your money. Hopefully that's not what institutions are doing. We're certainly not encouraging them to do that. I'll show you why in a minute. And there's some examples of that. Knowledge exchange, which is about consultancy. It's about collaborative research. It's about knowledge transfer partnerships. It's about placements actually as well sometimes. There's a big crossover between these areas. And lifelong learning, because that's about community learning and supporting people out there for life and for work, as Gary said this morning. So now the important thing about this is that this dynamic here in the past started over here on the left with the knowledge and expertise in the institution. How can we get that knowledge and expertise out there? Let's give it to these people. Let's reach out from the ivory tower to them and say, would you like some of our knowledge and expertise? You might have to give us some, do it on our basis, on our time. Sorry, we haven't got time to deal with you and we don't understand you anyway and we're too frightened to walk into institutions anyway. So that was a big problem. What we're trying to do here, I mean, there's still some of that goes on. What we're trying to do is start over here in this area. What are the problems and needs and opportunities out there in the businesses, in community? Now that could start with what are the grand research challenges that a lot of institutions are looking at, particular areas, food security, whatever. Or it could start with what are the strategic partnerships that particular institutions have with particular business sectors or particular businesses. But if we don't focus on here, then we're never really going to be delivering quality services that actually get that knowledge out there in an effective way, in a form that is useful and meaningful to others. So that's really a kind of dynamic change that we are trying to engender through this program. Back in 2001, there was a paper that proposed that engagement should be a core value in universities. So that's a core value along with research and teaching. And we really take that as the premise for the work we're doing in this area. And the idea really is to manage, for institutions to manage those partnerships, those strategic partnerships across the institution, not just to manage them as local, individual, personal contacts for those people involved. So that's the dynamic we're trying to enable in this change program. I probably need to speed up a bit. Okay. Right. So in doing so, there are obviously a number of funding and policy instruments to do that. This slide just gives you some examples of other policy and funding instruments that have been used to enable work in this area, in this external engagement area. So you have the Higher Education Innovation Fund, which is something that HEFCE, the Higher Education Funding Council, run. Was for all institutions, but now it's not quite all institutions. It's performance-based now, and it's measured, in fact, it's connected with a survey, which is an annual survey, which all institutions complete to measure their progress in areas like consultancy, in areas like delivering services to externals, CPD, things like patents, that sort of thing. There are similar initiatives in Scotland, all over the UK. The research councils are now funding a lot of work in this area, in knowledge exchange as well. There's one example there, £20 million across 4, I think, different projects, large projects funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. There's been lots of other European funding, as you know. So put it together, and there has been a lot of support for the sector in this area, although it's not perceived as such, because 150 million for the Higher Education Innovation Fund is really just a drop in the ocean compared to research funding. Back in 2003, Sir Richard Lambert, who used to run the CBI, put the business case for universities to work with businesses more effectively very well. So that remains a key policy document. And we then had this framework for science and innovation, which belongs to another government, but I think still remains relevant for ring-fencing funding around research and science. That's what Richard Lambert said, pointing out that public goods, as well as, don't know why that's happening, no phones on me, nothing to interfere, probably a bit of static, pointing out that public good as well as private good is something that universities need to strive to deliver. Okay, so what are some of the challenges then in responding to those sort of drivers that institutions face in this particular area of engaging with externals? And as you'll all no doubt appreciate, the language barrier is one of the biggest challenges, because institutions speak in one language about the research they're doing, about the teaching they're doing, about the curriculum they have. And again, John referred to this earlier. But obviously, you know, SMEs, for example, who we've heard are increasingly important in the West Midlands, but they're all, you know, more than 50% of GDP and more than 90-odd% of companies in the UK. Well, they don't have time for that. They don't understand the context of that. That language doesn't mean anything to them. They can't read a long, detailed research paper. They need something relevant to them, digestible. So that's a big issue. In the UK, we have excellent research. It's world-renowned, competes with that of the US. That's the conventional wisdom, that's true, but we have a big gap between research and innovation. We don't convert that particularly well into innovative opportunities, whether they're social or economic. So that's what a lot of this is about. We have these two agendas, one around impact that I've already described in the sector, the impact of research, and the other around engagement with externals. And at the moment, these are two parallel agendas that haven't properly come together, but actually they're dealing with the same thing. So that's something we're trying to help to coalesce. There are silos inevitably in large institutions in particular. Quite devolved some of them are. That makes it very difficult to manage and support change across those institutions. And I think to Incentives, I mentioned earlier, there's not a great deal of incentive for people to do work in this area of external engagement. A lot of the things they're incentivized to do are in research, to publish in high impact journals, or teaching, and now we've got MOOCs, massive online courses, and that's proving very fruitful actually for a number of academics, but particularly in the US. But incentives to work in this area are a bit patchy. That's something else we need to improve, and we're striving to help. Skills. There's a deficit of skills to do this sort of work. This sort of work it doesn't involve the usual research and teaching skills. It involves high-level communication skills. It involves empathy. It involves negotiation, facilitation, seeing things from others' points of view. All those things are a challenge for institutions. UUK felt that a new contract was required between the university and society. And I think that's probably what's unfolding before us at the moment. But it's a long-term change program. But there are opportunities in all of this, huge opportunities actually. I've mentioned CPD provision, that's growing. That's been growing for the past few years. Institutions providing, universities providing companies with professional development in all sorts of areas. That can be seen as the education offer, the research offer, getting that knowledge out there to do consultancy, collaborative research, contract research. That's growing as well. And ICT, which is what we really specialize in JISC, is an enabler of all of this. Virtual networks are increasingly important. CRM, customer relationship management, recording the information around those engagements in a systematic way. That can really help to get a grip of what the institution's doing. Research data management. Some of the research councils are requiring institutions to report and manage their research data in a particular way, and that's creating a lot more commonality around this area. Collaborative advantage is what they're all aiming for and what needs to be the goal. It can benefit the university sector as well as the externals. Long-term commitments, those strategic partnerships. So in a nutshell, this sort of change, institutions can't do everything. They're going to have to make strategic choices. Some things they may not be able to do anymore. They have to specialize in particular areas. But strategic partnerships across the whole institution are going to become more the norm. This isn't about losing academic focus. It isn't about losing academic integrity at all. There's quite a lot of scaremongering about that. It's about being a bit more focused and understanding that the business needs to function in order for the academia to flourish. Okay, so just now all I'm going to give you is sort of some examples of resources that we've delivered across this program, supporting this change, and things really that hopefully have helped the sector innovate. You can follow these up on our website. As I say, this will be circulated, but there are some examples in various different areas: professional development, helping institutions to embed the capability to analyse the impact of their research. Knowledge Transfer 2.0, which is a whole method looking at innovative ways of utilising virtual networks and much more lean and effective ways of converting opportunities in knowledge exchange to business opportunities, to business contracts. Service design, something relatively new in the sector, but it's moving forward and being used a lot in terms of students and their experience. Access management, how to manage the access in a consistent way for externals coming to the institution to use those resources. Open innovation, we've heard references to that a bit this morning, which is about operating in a way that recognises that not all the knowledge resides in your organisation or with your people. It's vital to be able to allow a flow to and from other organisations in order to really operate effectively. Even universities need to realise that, particularly, in fact. Access to resources, this is access to knowledge and expertise. Relationship management, the idea of having people who focus on particular relationships with businesses and externals, rather than having some sort of system for that, rather than ad hoc management of those relationships. And community content, this is about websites which have been put together in co-development projects between researchers and teachers and people in various external communities to benefit those communities. So there's some examples. You'll see some screenshots basically of those now, and a little bit of an explanation. So I won't say too much. It's more of a visual, more of a visual presentation from this point on. That was about bringing together 3 different groups that don't normally work together: researchers, IT people, and engagement people. And that's been very effective in getting good practice. The idea that from the beginning of a piece of research, you can start to record and assess impact, even if you don't know what it is. There's an intellectual discipline to try and do that. This is a rather bewildering diagram that I won't try and explain now, but essentially it's a different way of looking at research. Engaged research, not research for the research group, internalized and then published, but research which involves perhaps externals co-designing in the process, co-designing the actual research, and then a participatory process of actually doing it. And then not just publishing, but influence, application. So new ways of thinking about research and thinking about the data that arises from it. This is a screenshot of our professional development tool for this area. As I said, it requires a new skill set, which most academics don't have really, or haven't been incentivized to develop. And this is a way of helping them in that. It provides a sort of 16 process framework, and it provides a resource finder where you can look at training facilities, development facilities, and it provides a self-diagnosis, which, if I can just show you that, gives you this sort of rose diagram thing, which shows you the areas of weakness and strength in this engagement process. Some of these things, you can see what they are: strategy formation, resource management, opportunity identification, collaborative partnerships, things that are specific to this area of work, but they're also quite general business skills as well, so they're applicable to a lot of people who work in, you know, enterprise and collaborative roles. But that's a free resource online for teams and individuals to self-assess their capabilities in engagement. This is these are all free resources online actually. This is another one which is about helping institutions to embed the engagement process and structure in what they do. There's a workbook and a diagnostic that helps you do that. It's really readiness to engage effectively in this 3rd mission area. This is about engagement, access for engagement, access management. There's a whole guide there to talk you through some of the challenges and solutions around enabling access in a consistent and managed and risk-free way for externals to internal resources and shared resources. This one is about managing relationships, which I already referred to earlier, increasingly important in strategic partnerships. Involves working across the whole institution. And in that management of relationships, there's a sort of continuum that we discovered by all these projects that we supported and then extracted the good practice from. That's generally the model that we follow. That, you know, it kind of starts with the student at the centre, and then that becomes more relevant to employability and how the student and the graduate relates to the external world and is valued in more ways than one, the external world. And alumni become increasingly important in this environment as well. In the UK, they will be more and more important because obviously they've been paying students, so they're really important ambassadors, and they can act as mentors to students, and I believe they have a vital role to help employability and to help institutions' reputations actually. But unfortunately, the model in the past has been for a lot of institutions just to look for donations from alumni. We're trying to encourage a more of a sort of mutual benefit approach, which will benefit alumni as well. So moving out from there, that can result in external partnerships, and these pieces can be joined together. You can create employability opportunities from external partnerships and vice versa. This is coming to the end now. You'll probably be relieved to know because it's rather a lot of slides. This is a handbook on CRM and customer relationship management and how to really gauge your maturity in this business process. Not really about the system itself, because everybody wants to put a system in place, but putting a system in place before you know your own processes, before you can persuade academics to relinquish or share their contacts isn't going to work. So there's a whole range of policies, procedures, practices that need to be adopted before a CRM system's in place, and this is what this is about, really, readiness for that. And ultimately that can create business intelligence. This is an example of one of the community content projects we've supported, a whole portfolio here as well. This one's about community languages, not actually the European languages, but some of the community ones important in the UK, like Urdu, Gujarati, that sort of thing. A joint thing with University of Southampton, that one. This is about digitising assets online. Service design I've mentioned, that's going to become increasingly important. I think the whole concept of service in a lot of universities is a contested concept. Internal service maybe is accepted, service from the IT department, internally service like that. But externally, the whole concept of service to externals is still not really very well understood or done. And again, there needs to be much more professional understanding of that in such a way as not to spoil the academic mission, but that's very much a growing area. Okay, and this is an area, open innovation access to resources. This is just a screenshot of all the different projects we've funded there, if you can follow that up online. This is also about institutions leading partnerships in local contexts with local enterprise partnerships, which the government set up in a number of different regions, because we no longer have regional development agencies, which you heard about earlier. And it's about them leading and providing information services in those partnerships. Collaborative provision, of course, and open innovation marketplaces. That's an example of an open innovation marketplace, as one of the projects that we funded. Shows how you can manage this online, place to have ideas, and a place to incubate those ideas and get user input to them, and a place to actually turn those into projects. And this kind of suggests as well that the whole process of creating a project is further down the line than not setting that up initially, but you know, the co-creation process happens first. Sorry about the feedback. And there we go. That's probably enough for me, I think. More than enough, actually. Thank you very much for listening so patiently to such an extensive presentation. Any questions, I guess, if there's time there?
Any immediate questions?
Observations?
So as I say, we will share with you the slide, so all those references and websites you can follow at your leisure. Okay. Thank you, Simon. We'll crack on with Leadership Foundation for Higher Education, represented by Dr. Leslie Huxley.
I'll remove, yeah.